Hello everyone and welcome back to English with Kayleigh. In today's video we're going to be analysing another one of Jackie Kay's poems which is entitled Plague. So again, this comes from the CAIE A-level syllabus. So let's get into it. First of all, I'm going to read the poem to you and then we'll break it down and look at it stanza by stanza. Plague. Our black door has a white X. Next door but one has a white X. 59, 64, 65, 62, 68, and, fresh this morning, 58. The curly-headed twins just turned 4. Our white X on our black door seems bigger than 64. 2 of us are blighted. When I come home, the first thing I see is the white X. I can't help myself. Once I've looked, I can't stop. Even inside, with all the terrible breathing and the smell of the terrible breathing, even inside, I still see X. Last night, the shape of it falling asleep. I don't sleep deep now. I sleep the sleep of the dying's companion. Fitful, fearful, strange, sudden, still moments, long, empty moments, and the loud, breathless breathing. I see X. It is the sign of the devil. I pray for the breathing to stop. I get up and watch my 2 shrunken sons. Outside, the canny moon is hopeful. Tonight, let them both go in one fell swoop. And let me get that X off. I've seen them come late with the black paint. I want the X painted over immediately. I want a plain black door. But 62 says, once a marked house, always a marked house. Even after it is painted over, you will still see it underneath, 62 says, smiling the strangest smile. It never goes, you know, never. I looked and looked at 62, and all I could see was a black door. 62 whispered, you can only see your own X then. She gripped my arm till it hurt. I tell myself 62 has lost her mind, poor soul. But at night I hear the strange sound of X crashing its awkward limbs, seeking the foreheads of my 2 dying sons. X has a life of its own, I'm certain. I hear the reckless, racy breathing. I'm sweating myself now. I'm losing weight. I can see our bones. Our bones lying in the grave, silently arranged. Our bones, one big white X lying on the black earth. So if we just talk through some of the fundamental understandings of what the poem is about and its structure, if we look at the topic, of course, the most obvious one is talking about the plague and death and illness. So a little bit of context was that the plague was particularly prevalent across the world in the 1300s, more specifically 1346 to 1353. And it also made quite a serious return in London and in Great Britain in 1665. And the picture you can see there is of the people who would go into the houses after people had sadly died from the plague and drag the bodies out and find a place to burn them or to bury them. So in terms of the themes that we see this idea of loss and grief, but more so when somebody is coming to their end of their life and parental love and almost wanting to remove the suffering of her children. And we also see a nod to society here, in which, you know, when 62 says once a marked house, always a marked house, is this the view that society takes upon these people? in terms of structure, we have these beautiful couplets, and this not only shows or lends itself to the idea of quite a punchy, fast-paced story, again showing, you know, the rapid deterioration of this disease and how it can take a hold of a person, but it also serves as a visual image of perhaps these graves that are lined up next to each other to mark the dead who have died because of the plague. So now we're going to take a look at it a little bit more in depth. So of course, if we just look at the title Plague, so the collection it comes from is Off Colour, which was released in 1998. And the poems within this collection explore illness, sickness and health, looking at past and present in quite a dynamic and original way. So of course we know this is looking at illness and sickness from the past. So the first couplet here, our black door has a white X, next door but one has a white X. We've got declarative sentences here, are very much matter of fact, you know, and we don't see a lot of emotion coming through at this point. But we do see this juxtaposing of the colours. Our black door has a white X. So we get the idea in the sense here, something is amiss, something is wrong. Then we have these numbers coming through, the door numbers, and the fact that they're listed in such a way really goes to show the extent of the disease, and how quickly it's spreading through the street and the area. Then we get this very poignant and sad sentence. The curly-headed twins just turned 4. So again, very matter of fact, but I think highlighting the fact here that nobody is immune or can escape this horrible disease. Children and adults alike are getting sick. Our white X on our black door. So again, we've got this repetition, so, you know, really highlighting and emphasizing this is wrong. There's something wrong here. Seems bigger than 64. 2 of us are blighted. Now, I mean, it could be a literal explanation, because as we find out, 2 of the speaker's sons are infected and are very, very ill with the plague. But also metaphorically, it could also mean that to her, you know, this problem seems much bigger because it directly influences her and the speaker's feelings, so that it's much closer to home and it's painful to witness and to see and experience. So when I come home, the first thing I see is the white X. I can't help myself. Once I've looked, I can't stop. And here we see this enjambment here, really emphasizing and highlight the disbelief, and kind of the extended time when the speaker was just staring at the door and the realization setting in of what's happening. Even inside, with all the terrible breathing and the smell of the terrible breathing, even inside, I still see X. So here we get this very much a direct image here of the plague and one of the symptoms, which is shortness of breath and difficulty with breathing. And here we've got this beautiful synesthesia, in which one sense triggers another sense, one of the 5 senses. So because of the smell of the breath that she's experiencing, she can also then, her sight is also triggered in that she can still see X appearing in her mind when she's inside the home. Last night, the shape of it falling asleep. I don't sleep deep now. I sleep the sleep of the dying's companion, fitful, fearful, strange, sudden moments. Strange, sudden, still moments, long, empty moments. Apologies, that moments should be right next to the word empty there. I'll be sure to leave a note on that in the comments. So here we've got this assonance of this E sound and the repetition. And I think that this really goes to highlight the speaker's exhaustion and despair. She's not resting, the speaker's not sleeping, not able to have any kind of rest, just because the speaker's experiencing this despair and helplessness and worry for her children. So we get the dying's companion, and this again links to the two sons that were mentioned, and that they are deteriorating and they are dying. Fitful, fearful. So we've got this consonance here, this emphasis of fear and despair again. And I think when we take a look at the next line, strange, sudden, still moments, we've got this sibilant. And if we look at the assonance and repetition in the previous stanza, the consonants and this emphasis of fear, and then the sibilants, the use of sibilants, we get this very erratic voice coming through, the urgency of the matter, and the confusion and despair surrounding the household. And the loud, breathless breathing, got this beautiful oxymoron here of almost fleeting life. That as I said, one of the symptoms of the plague was the shortness of breath and not being able to catch your breath almost. And of course, giving a nod to this loss of life. I see X. It is the sign of the devil. Some very strong caesareas in the poem. Is this now? Are we looking at X as no longer a sign on the door, but as a symbol of death that is coming? And again, coupled with the idea, it is the sign of the devil. So within this particular section of the poem, we see enjambment. I sleep the sleep of the dying's companion, long empty moments and the loud breathless breathing. I think this really highlights this enduring illness, the time that is passing, that it's very slow and painful, not only for the two boys, the two sons that are sick, but also for the speaker and their experience. I pray for the breathing to stop. This is very poignant and sad, because it obviously lends itself to the idea that she hopes and wishes that this pain can be taken away from her children, but of course that means accepting their death. I get up and watch my two shrunken sons. Again, we've got that sibilance coming through of the S sound, highlighting the fact that they are withering away. Outside, the canny moon is hopeful. Now, canny in Scottish dialect is to mean something is lovely or nice. And this word hopeful, the moon is personified here. And it almost reflects her wish for the suffering to end. She is also possibly hopeful that that their lives are going to come to an end, but more so meaning that the suffering is going to come to an end for them. Tonight, let them both go in one fell swoop. She wants them to have this peaceful release, to be out of misery and no longer suffering. And then we have a kind of volta in what's happening. So in this stanza she's talking about them moving on, but what's important for her as well is to remove this symbol of death. Let me get that X off. Remove that symbol of death and that reminder of what's been happening. I've seen them come late with the black paint. I want the X painted over immediately. I want a plain black door. Again, removing of that constant reminder. We see this almost grief and sadness of the speaker in that they want to return to the past, and at a time where this experience wasn't taking a hold of her children and of her and of the society. But 62 says, once a marked house, always a marked house. So of course we see this idea of lasting trauma when something like this happens. is a family ever truly able to recover or go back to a happier time? And also this could be a nod to society's view as well. Once you've been marked or branded as something, can you ever come back from that? And I think this is a good time to mention David Paddy when he says that, you know, society shapes us as individuals. It creates our identity, you know, and traumatic experiences that we face almost shapes who we are. You know, we've seen that in Jackie Kay's poetry before, in particular in Compound Fracture, where Jackie Kay herself broke her leg when she was very young, and you know, she was unable to walk for about 18 months, and that's where she said she developed her love of writing, and that's when she became a writer. So is it the things that happen to us, is that what defines us, and is that society's view? Even after it's painted over, you will still see it underneath. The loss will always remain. The heartache and the trauma of the experiences will always stay with you. 62 says, smiling the stranger's smile. Again, we've got this sibilance coming through, you know, almost a nod to delusion. And then it says, it never goes, you know, never. And we've got this anaphora here of never. And almost, you know, the unaccountability of death, that, you know, they will just come and take your loved ones without any remorse or feeling. I looked and looked at 62, and all I could see was a black door. So it possibly lends itself to the idea that 62 has already lost someone and is, you know, and has had this mark removed from her. But as 62 says, you can only see your own ex then. You know, almost as if the relatives of victims can only see death or the experience of that trauma. I think what's also quite important here is that people are not referred to by name but by number. This almost, you know, dehumanization. Of course, we know during the plague it was impossible to hold a funeral for the dead and to bury them. A lot of them were removed from the house, being dragged onto carts and dumped, their bodies being dumped. So we also see this, you know, dehumanization of people within the time. She gripped my arm till it hurt. I tell myself 62 has lost her mind, poor soul. But at night I hear the strange sound of X, and it's finally here being personified as, you know, as a symbol, as a nod to death and the devil. And we see it almost crashing and breaking into the house, looking for the two dying sons, crashing its awkward limbs, seeking the foreheads of my two dying sons. X has a life of its own. Again, this personification, I'm certain. I hear the reckless, racy breathing. I'm sweating now myself. I'm losing weight. I can see our bones. So now here we get this idea that the speaker has also become sick and is deteriorating. Sadly, when the plague was rife in the 1600s and in the 1300s, people who were suffering were locked in their houses, even the healthy members of the family, which sadly would often result in the others becoming sick and dying of the same disease. So when the speaker says, I can see our bones, we really, this is emphasized here, that all three of the members of the household are deteriorating physically. And then we have this almost conclusive couplet, our bones lying in the grave, silently arranged. Our bones, one big white X lying on the black earth. We've got this absolutely beautiful imagery here of bones being crossed over underground, of course symbolic of the white X on the door, and that it has broken through, it has taken a hold of the family, and now they are reduced to bones in the ground. So an absolutely beautiful poem here by Jackie Kay. So I'm going to continue with the series, highlighting and talking through more of Jackie Kay's poems. So please don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos, and I'll catch you in the next one.